brutality, stealth, and snuff. In 2003, Rockstar Games released what would arguably be the most controversial game in their catalog, Manhunt. But 20 years later, is it Manhunt's story that still makes it so hotly debated, or what playing it says about you?
Now to this video game, so horrifying it has been banned in Great Britain. We must warn you, there is nothing about this that is not disturbing.
Welcome back to the Stash, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Manhunt. Manhunt is so iconic at this point, it scarcely needs its own introduction, but an introduction it will get. Its imagery is brutality at its finest. Its gritty lo-fi snuff film style is still inspiring devs to this day, and its execution still surpassed the level that many violent video games today are still trying to reach and push the limit on. Except for you, Mortal Kombat. You're doing great. You're doing great. You're always good. But hey, is that a good thing? Is that what Rockstar Games wanted? Before I go on, let me just say that I think Rockstar set out to make a horror game, and Manhunt is a good horror game. I'd even go so far as to say it's a heavily misunderstood masterpiece, from its incredible music and sound design to its artistic choices and aesthetic referencing its B-movie extremity roots. It's incredibly unique and definitely worth a playthrough, so please, put down your pitchforks. I'm not here to bash Manhunt. Now, if you somehow never heard of Manhunt, or your parents wouldn't buy it for you, I know that mine wouldn't, I didn't even ask. Let's do a quick recap so you can understand what the fuck I'm about to ramble on about. In Manhunt, players take on the role of James Earl Cash, a death row inmate. Cash's lethal injection is swapped out for a sedative by corrupt cops and is unexpectedly saved from execution by a mysterious director named Lionel Starkweather, who forces him to participate in a sadistic snuff film. Throughout the game, Cash is pushed to his limits as he must survive increasingly dangerous, orchestrated scenarios and eliminate other criminals and gang members along the way. Starkweather provides Cash with instructions and encouragement via an earpiece as he aims to capture the most shocking and brutal executions on film to sell his latest snuff masterpiece. As the story unravels, Cash uncovers a vicious ring of degenerates and attempts to survive the night and get revenge on the director who ruined his, I guess, afterlife. From a gameplay perspective, your goal is to use stealth to hunt down other criminals and gang members and assassinate them in incredibly brutal ways, all while avoiding detection long enough so that you can escape your current fate. The game's mechanics were designed to be as graphic as possible, with the sound effects really hammering it in for effect. Oh yeah, pun intended, get ready, there's more. You could strangle dudes with a plastic bag, shank them with shards of glass from broken windows, or even go absolutely ham with a baseball bat.
Hey, don't give it away.
And of course, all of this violence didn't sit very well with a lot of people, especially when the game was released in 2003. Politicians and activists alike were quick to condemn the game, calling it a murder simulator and blaming it as inspiration for a real-life crime in the UK, which was later completely disproven. And if you watch my channel before, you know that parents and politicians love to do what? Freak the fuck out! And oh boy, did it cause a shitstorm. Rockstar, for their part, didn't fucking help things with their marketing campaign. Rockstar just out here fucking pouring gasoline on their own fire. They're like, it's not hot enough, it's not hot enough. This is fine. The trailers and advertisements for Manhunt emphasized the violence and brutality and showed off its named characters who were named after real-life murderers, which further only fueled the controversy, and right hot off the heels of GTA's own fecal hurricane. It's almost as if the developers at Rockstar were trying to be controversial and provocative on purpose. Now, some people might say, well, see, that's a bit disturbing, and I say, well, who doesn't love a good old-fashioned murder spree?
Because it's so much fun, Chan. Get it?
Well, that's exactly my point. See where this is going? Violence in video games has always been a hotly debated topic. If you're watching this, I probably don't even need to tell you that. The ESRB was all too familiar at this point with putting out fires constantly, but the trend was speeding up. Games were becoming more realistic, and so too was their violence, and it was quickly changing the landscape of media. But why Manhunt now? Why cause even more controversy? Now, Rockstar isn't dumb. They've put out some of the most beloved games in history, and their lawyers are no stranger to dealing with the myriad of fallout that always happens on their releases. And it always happens. Literally every fucking release, I think. I mean, if there's one Rockstar game that hasn't gotten controversy on release, will you tell me about it? Because I don't know one. Oh, watch, there's gonna fucking be one. There's gonna be one. Some devs even felt they could be going too far. Some were quoted saying there was almost a mutiny within the team, because the violence in Manhunt was unjustifiable. But apparently the violence in GTA was because... That sounds like a lot of fucking copium, but okay, my guy. Yeah, this is justifiable. You told that to my 12-year-old ass trying to get a 5-star rating to see how long I could survive. You call that justifiable? Yeah, yeah, sure. Okay, but stick with me. What if the violence was the point? What if Rockstar had taken a shot at making their own horror game and utilized it as a way to critique the state of games and the players themselves, and wrapped it in a brutal, blood-filled pill they would force the industry to swallow? Manhunt takes place in Carcer City, a fictionalized place closely located to Liberty City, Rockstar's version of my hometown, New York. Carcer is a dark and gritty place, full of crime and corruption that we had yet to see at this scale, but otherwise we had no geographical markers to tie it to any real-life city like we had in the other games, such as Vice City and Miami. So maybe it wasn't supposed to be a known city. Maybe it was there to reflect the worst aspects of our own society, and by not giving a geographical location, it would be much easier to compare it to whatever city you lived in. Rockstar knew its players were now growing up with their games. They had a solid fan base that would jump at their next release, which is still true to this day. They knew their audience's taste, and they've yet to put out a game that didn't resonate with them. And they placed this game in their already existing universe, a world we had already inhabited for years and were familiar with. But now our protagonist wasn't a gruff cowboy anti-hero or a classic Italian mobster clawing their way to the top of the food chain. This time we took control of a serial killer, emotionless, void of defining dialogue, a blank slate. We took control of a gamer. Oh shit. Take a moment and think over the course of every game you've played. How many times have you killed someone or something? Is it safe to say your virtual body count makes any real infamous killer look like a fucking teddy bear in comparison? Probably, right? Regardless of the story of many games, killing is something that we've become very comfortable with as gamers. But Manhunt sought to change that. The deaths in Manhunt were causing such a commotion because of the way it made people feel. The violence in the game wasn't just graphic, it was personal. You were the one doing the killing as per usual, but now the game encouraged you to be as brutal and sadistic as possible for someone's entertainment. You had to plan your kills carefully and hold out each excruciating second to get the best kill and receive the best rating, forcing you to masterfully stalk your prey and consider if it was even worth it. Should you turn around and stop? Well, not if you wanted to be rewarded. And this time, we didn't have a character who we could emotionally connect with, a character who commented on their situation, condoning or condemning it. We were left with ourselves. It didn't matter how James Earl Cash felt, he never commented on it. How did you feel about what you were doing? It's not a game that's designed to be pleasant. It's designed to make you work hard for your kills and then repulse you by them. Even if we are hunting depraved individuals, we're forced to hear their last cries for help. You're not supposed to like it. It calls into question the gratification we get from killing in games over any sense of remorse, regret, or guilt that we may feel. Rockstar made a game that, looking back, was a blatant reaction to our desensitization to violence in video games. In an interview in 2019, the writers even came out and said so themselves, albeit it was 16 years late, so either that was a retcon or they just took their sweet fucking time. But it happened nonetheless, straight from the horse's mouth. The signs were so obvious that it was easy to hide it in their dark humor, but the plot actually reads more like a meta-narrative where a very self-aware Rockstar is Lionel Starkweather. Take for instance in the 8th scene of the game, A View of Innocence. We fight a gang called the Innocents, with a Z, in a mall. At the time, malls were the place to hang out for young people. You could look at that and say we were metaphorically and physically being asked to kill off our own innocence in a place tied to that very innocence as we grew up. Now that could be a stretch, but Rockstar could have put that gang anywhere else in the game and it had much less implication. And it's how they really warm you up to the violence that's the most fucked up part, right? First, it's the hoods. Nobody's really. Maybe some corrupt cops and hooligans, but they're out to get you, so dispatch them fast. It's easy to justify. It is the tutorial after all. We don't think too much about it yet. Just survive. Then it's the skins. The white supremacists. Much more easily justifiable, especially when their in-game dialogue is spouting really hateful rhetoric. The director even seems to want these dudes dead the most, and in turn, so do you. And I don't think I have to go into how these types of people are very real, and critiquing their very real-world violence and how we deal with it as a society has never really left the zeitgeist. And anyone who played online shooters at the time like COD will remember plenty of that same rhetoric being spewed around lobby chats with zero thought or repercussion. Like zero repercussion. I mean, do you remember those lobbies? Of course you do, because it really sort of hardened your scales, right? I mean, like, people said some fucked up shit in there. Like, I was shocked. I heard words in there that I didn't even know existed. And honestly, it still exists to this day. I mean, they were fucking awful, man. And I think a gang later encountered called the War Dogs are really easy to draw parallels to how a lot of gamers acted at the time, and how easy it's always been to desensitize people to violence of war by making games about it that made you feel heroic and badass. Even the game's final boss, the infamous Pigsy, a deranged lunatic murderer with a chainsaw who chases you around the director's house. I distinctly remember how fucking good it felt to beat him, and then immediately feeling absolutely terrible when he runs away, begging for his life. I mean, the sound effects are awful. It doesn't feel good. But that's why horror is such an excellent and diverse genre. It allows you to either laugh at the insane B-movie gore of The Evil Dead, or hit you with a rumination on grief and loss in a movie like The Babadook, for instance. Rockstar have always been incredibly clever about hiding dark scenarios in a cloud of campy humor to make it easy to digest, which was probably why this was never debated more at the time of release. Had reviewers taken more time to dive in why this game was made, then the discourse around it might have been very different. Games have evolved now as a medium to cover many topics, just like movies and TV shows and plays, and we shouldn't be too quick to judge or condemn something just because it doesn't fit into our own worldview, and we should be especially open to things that ask us to analyze why we consume the media that we do. At the same time, though, we have to recognize that games are just that. They're games. They're a form of entertainment, and they weren't meant to be taken that seriously, especially at that time in 2003. I mean, we were just sort of burgeoning into them being a new medium. And Manhunt is fun as fuck. It is. The aesthetics are so gritty and cool, and you fucking hate these guys and you want to kill them. You feel that really, very real sense of survival, and it's fucking rad. Plus, I grew up with this, King, so stealth games are my absolute shit. And then throwing some John Carpenter-esque music in there, this game's fucking solid. It is. But is it okay to enjoy a game where you're encouraged to kill people in such a gruesome way? Is it okay to market games like that to impressionable young people? Personally, I don't think there's a simple answer to those questions. It's very nuanced. Games can also just be fun as hell and are a stress relief for a lot of people. But as gamers, we have to be responsible for our own actions and our own feelings. We have to be able to separate fantasy from reality, and we have to be mindful of the impact our actions can have on other people. And who better to spark those really hard questions to ask ourselves than a game company that the world had, and still very much does, all have their eyes on? In the end, I think the controversy surrounding Manhunt was a reflection of our own society's fears and insecurities around gaming. We were afraid of what the game represented, of what it said about our society, our culture, about us. And while it may not be for everyone, there is no denying that it's a game that will stick with you long after you put down the controller. And I think 20 years later, it's definitely still worth a playthrough, if not for anything other than its stellar atmosphere and execution. Oh, pun intended. So what do you think? Was Manhunt a genius way of examining violence in the media and our consumption of it? Or was it just a sick stealth murder simulator? Could it be both and still be just as valid? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Hey, if you like what I do, maybe think about giving me a subscribe, hit that like button, check out some of the other videos we have. It really helps me spend more time doing these great deep dives into the games that we all like. And if you have an idea for what else I should review or deep dive into, also let me know in the comments section. We have reviews and all that good stuff on the page. But hey, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, my friends, stay spooky. And I'll see you real soon. I mean, they had no right to make those games like such fashion icons too. I mean, like the smileys. Come on. Also, like, what's that fucking series? Oh my god. Yeah, the fucking Purge. Okay, Purge. We see you. Purge was like, "Can I copy your homework?" And they were like, "Yeah, just change a little bit." Purge was like, "I don't know what that means, but we'll throw Ethan Hawke at it." Ethan Hawke, save us. Save us from ourselves. Save us from America.